Hello, it's Scott Manley here. Today we are going back into history, and I know what you're thinking. You're looking at Kerbal Space Program here, and you're thinking, oh, he's going to play some more Kerbal Space Program, just like the good old days of Scott Manley 10 years ago. But no, I am going even further back, because some of you may have also noticed in the top right there is a screen showing copyright 1982 Sinclair Research Limited. And if you were growing up in Britain in the 80s, you may well have seen this many times. It's what greets you when you turn on a Sinclair ZX Spectrum, specifically the 48K version of their low-cost color computer. So that was the first computer that I learned to program on. I'd played video games before, but this was the first one that actually let me get in and start writing code. And I very quickly graduated from Sinclair Basic to assembly language, and then to other computers that actually had real peripherals. But there was some recent discussion recently about how powerful modern hardware is and how it could land on the moon. I wondered whether I could make a 1982 ZX Spectrum control a spacecraft to land on the moon. Now, obviously, I don't have a real spacecraft to land on the moon, so I'm going to use a simulated lander in Kerbal Space Program, and it's going to be operated by an emulated computer in using Spectacular, which is a paid ZX Spectrum emulator. It has serial port support, which is really important because you wonder, how does a 1982 piece of hardware control a spacecraft? While the AGC, the Apollo Guidance Computer in the 1960s, may have been kind of slow compared to much hardware that followed it, it had a lot of interfaces to talk to all the hardware on here. The ZX Spectrum is notoriously austere in terms of its peripherals. It had some custom stuff to create graphics, but the sound was literally one of the CPU I/O legs linked to the audio port, so it could either go high or low. You had 1-bit audio, and still amazing programmers could do great things with that 1 bit of audio. Similarly, loading stuff from the tape was a leg which would go high or low, and they would be able to read that out. So it didn't have a serial port by default, but very soon after its release, there was a piece of hardware called Interface 1. And that was primarily used by people for the microdrive, which was Sinclair's proprietary storage system that enabled you to load software in seconds rather than minutes. But it also included an RS-232 port, which is a common standard for serial interfaces, and that's what I'm going to use on this emulator. It took a while to set up, but there's a pair of virtual ports here set up on Windows, which I'm going to use to talk to the Spectrum. But there is no serial port support in Kerbal Space Program, so instead I'm going to have another program that talks to it. So I'm going to use the kRPC mod, which is a much more sensible way of remote controlling Kerbal Space Program. It lets you perform remote procedure calls to control the spacecraft, read the state, and use whatever language you like. So I just did the default and used Python. So I have a Python bit of code here. It imports kRPC, and it connects to it, and it reads data. It also imports serial, and it generates a serial port and starts talking to the ZX Spectrum. Great. So now, this is going to act as an intermediary. Down here, it's going to read state from the simulation. It's then going to package up a bunch of that data, basically altitude, speed, thrust to weight, send that across the wire, and then try to read the response in a timely manner, and then use that to set attitude and set the throttle. That's how this is going to work in theory. In practice, boy, the performance is not there, let's say. But we're going to select a tape down here, the lander program, and I'm going to hit load. Now, I can actually show you how you would type this on the keyboard. To hit the load, you would have to hit the J key, and it would do load, and then you'd need symbol shift, quote, oh, no, actually. delete, where's the quote? The quote is up here. Every key on the ZX Spectrum keyboard did a dozen different things. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it did a lot of different things. Anyway, this is it loading off tape. Those borders are showing you this carrier signal. It's loading the program Lander, which is a basic program written in ZX Basic. That noise sounds like a modem. That's what tape sounded like in those days. We didn't have a disk drive for the ZX Spectrum until the +3 came along. Okay, so it's loaded, and I can list this by hitting list, K key, there, list, and hit return. and it's going to start scrolling down. So you see how this works. It has a line number followed by a command and followed by parameters. So we're setting variables here for like G, gravity of the moon, the lag that we're expecting, their target altitude. Then we set the format on the serial port, start reading and writing it, and then we separate the data that comes across the serial port into a number of variables. Then, using those parameters, we start to compute the attitude and the acceleration that we'd require. And there's also a transition to a state where we get to actually land, and that will use a slightly different algorithm. But this is all pretty easy. We can run this by hitting run and hit run. Now it is currently listening on the serial port, but it's not doing anything because the Python code isn't running. So first of all, I'm going to load the state into the Kerbal thing. And it's apparently firing its engines already. Let's turn that off. And then we're going to start the Python code. And it's running now. Excellent. So you can see what's going on here. So we're descending towards the moon. The numbers to look at here. This line here shows the string that's being sent across the serial port. So this is like altitude, velocity, thrust to weight ratio, and the sequence number. These are broke out into these first 4 lines for for debugging. The next 3 lines are, this is the 2 times. One is like the time to decelerate in time. The other is the time to impact, assuming 50% thrust for the deceleration. And so it tries to keep these 2 equal, and it also tries to get 50% thrust. The reason I use 50% thrust is because if we have an engine failure, we want margin. If we, say, get some bad data, we want to have some margin. So anyway, that is working. And what you're now going to notice is these numbers are updating pretty slowly. First of all, those flashes around the outside are very similar to how we loaded stuff off the tape. That's because the CPU is basically talking directly to the RS-232 port. This 3.9 megahertz CPU is just bit-banging the heck out of this. So it is busy waiting as it's trying to set the values on this 9600 baud line. It spends thousands of instructions to read a single byte off of bit off of this port. You'll also notice that this thing gets read in first, and then there's a bit of a lag before these things show up, right? And then another bit of a lag before these things update. So that shows you how slow it is to run this under ZX, Sinclair Basic. Now on the Python side, what you can see is that we're sending over the state, which is the same thing here, and then we are generally seeing Spectrum says, and that's what we're reading back. And the important thing to see is this final number on the sending has like a single digit from 0 to 9. When Spectrum says, it's the second to last number there that it's supposed to repeat back. So it's basically a sequence number to make sure this thing does not get out of step, because it could very easily get out of step. It actually takes a lot of effort for the Spectrum to talk to this. So I want to make sure that I'm not repeatedly asking it for data when it has none. Also, I want to make sure that it's not getting way ahead of me in terms of sending it data and it getting lagged behind the real simulation. This is about as fast as I could get it to run. I could definitely get it to run faster, but sometimes it would get desynchronized and we'd end up slamming into the moon because of lag. This seems a decent compromise. So it's running updates about once every second, but sometimes this lag could be about 2 seconds. And 2 seconds sounds a lot for a spacecraft which is hurtling towards the surface of the moon at hundreds of miles per hour. But you know what? The lunar lander, the Apollo guidance computer, it ran on a 2-second cycle where it would compute some values at that rate, and it would be able to land on the moon like that because it would then take those values and hand it off to other processors which would control things with much more local precision. It would basically hand off the load of the high level stuff to the lower level stuff, and you could do that because it had all this extra hardware. Now, whether this works for me, I don't know. Whether it actually hits the moon at a reasonable spot or it hits a boulder field, I don't know. It has no guidance on there. It barely has attitude control. The attitude control is entirely being driven by this asking for certain attitudes rather than actually computing, say, what the Surveyor spacecraft did based on multiple radio beams. But we're coming down, and what you're going to see is it should transition into the landing mode. It should go into vertical, somewhere between 100 meters and 30 meters up. hopefully at that point its lateral velocity will be relatively low. Looks like we got a kind of flat area of the moon here. Sometimes it overshoots on its deceleration. Yeah, it overshot just a little bit, so it'll now descend down until its speed gets back up. And hopefully it will get down to the surface at a reasonable speed. So at this point it's using much simpler, much smaller changes in the thrust to make sure that it doesn't end up going upwards and burn any fuel. But that's it, look, it's coming down. It's drifting sideways, but you know what? We built it with a wide enough base that it should be able to handle this. Comes down and contact light, engine shutdown, program stopped. Victory! Yes, you can in fact land a spacecraft on the moon using 1982 Sinclair Basic. We're talking over a serial port to a Python program, talking to Kerbal Space Program. The lag is terrible. The performance could probably be improved by writing this in assembly language, and certainly I used to write raw machine code into the ZX Spectrum before I ever learned what assembly language was. However, I found returning to ZX Spectrum Basic was a little bit of nostalgia at first, but it very, very quickly became incredible amounts of pain, and that's why you've only really got half of an implementation here. I wanted to have like nice graphs and stuff, and I was like, I am not wanting to code much more on this. If you want to see like just how difficult things could get on this, sometimes when this crashed, it would leave the serial port open, and initially I couldn't figure out how to close it, so I would just like hit the reset button, right? Because reset, nice and easy, bring up a new prompt. But I figure out the correct way to do it eventually, and it just shows you how difficult it is to use this Sinclair keyboard. Again, these were all little red rubber keys. Everyone complained about the keyboard quality on this thing, but it was cheap and cheerful and it worked. The hard thing was that every key had like 6 functions, up to 6 functions, right? And to close the serial port, you need to call this close command. And to do that, you have to do cap shift, symbol shift, and that puts us into enhanced mode. But then we have to hit symbol shift again and hit the close button. And now you're supposed to close number 4, but if I hit number 4, it's still in shift mode, so I have to take it out of symbol shift mode, and I have to backspace a key, right? Take it out of caps lock mode and hit 4, and finally we have hit the command to close the serial port that I left open because something crashed. Literally, I mean, because we were, of course, flying spacecraft. Yeah, the ZX Spectrum is an iconic piece of hardware. Many programmers, including me, cut their teeth on it. It kept having games develop for it. Like a decade after it's released, programmers figured out how to squeeze amazing performance out of this thing by working close to the metal. And I am not anywhere near that. I am intentionally using BASIC to just show how underpowered this hardware is. But sure, on paper, 3.9 megahertz is a lot faster than the AGC. I'm sure there's ways with the right peripherals that you could do something close to the full Apollo guidance stack. But as I said, modern hardware is a whole lot faster. People pointed out, it was Peter Diamandis pointed out that this phone is thousands of times more powerful than the AGC that landed on the moon. In fact, this phone is more powerful than the ASCII Red, which was the fastest computer in the world in the late 1990s. It broke the 1 teraflop barrier. Now, I responded to Peter Diamandis by saying, that's nothing. You have to realize that the average cell phone's charger now has more processing power. It's quite common to find chargers that need to negotiate power with USB-C devices will have the equivalent of an ARM Cortex CPU in there, running faster than the AGC, maybe having only 8 kilobytes of memory, 64 kilobytes of ROM, but that is more than enough to land on the moon. So maybe, just maybe, there will be a sequel to this where we land on the moon using something even more ridiculous. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.